We saw earlier on, Jackie, that you had a program group which had your name assigned to it. And I think some of the people watching would be quite interested in seeing how they can set up their own program groups.
Yeah, well, let's do that now, shall we?
Fine.
Very easy to do, you'll be pleased to hear. Let's first of all maximise Program Manager, and we'll just get Windows to arrange those icons for us. Select Arrange Icons.
Right.
Now, notice at this point, Steve, we don't have any groups icon. Open, sorry.
Good icons on the brain.
That's right. All of our groups are currently closed. To create our own group, we need to go to the File menu and select New.
Right.
And Windows defaults to Program Group.
Okay.
So we'll say OK. And now we need to type in a name for our group. So let's call this Steve's group, shall we?
Mm-hmm. Be nice and vain about it.
Yes. The group file information we don't have to worry about. Whatever icons we place into your group, all of that data will be saved in a group file which will be created and generated automatically by Windows.
Good.
So we'll say OK at that point. So there's your group, rather large.
Nice big one.
Let's size it. We could size your group or your window diagonally. Just bring it up to there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the next thing that we need to do
put something
is to put something in it, yes. Empty group's not a lot of use to anybody, really. Go to the File menu and select New. And notice this time Windows defaults to New Item because it knows we're sitting within a group, therefore we must want to add an item.
Okay.
Absolutely correct. So there we say OK. And let's now start to add a new item. Well, what would you like within this group, Steve? Any preferences?
Well, there's a DOS tool that I used to use. It's called DOS Editor for editing text files.
All right, fine. Well, let's perhaps add that to your group, shall we? Position my cursor in the command line and then go to Browse.
The Browse button?
To the Browse button.
Okay.
And what we're now going to do is browse our hard disk so that we can locate this file edit.com.
If we were on a network, could we also browse the network?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good.
So let's go up to my root.
And you just double-clicked on that?
I double-clicked. We're going to cover file management and moving around directories later on, so don't worry too much about that right now.
Okay.
And we want to go into my DOS directory here.
Double-click again.
And if we use the scroll bars, there we have edit.com.
Okay. So you must know the name of the file.
You must know the name of the
helps.
file, yes. Windows will help as much as it can, but you need to input as well, and we'll select OK. So we now have the path set up that will take us to that file, edit.com.
Okay.
Next thing we need to do is to put a name in. So you might want to have something like Steve's MS-DOS tool or something like that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
And at this point, we might want to point out a couple of things. We could have a shortcut key, which we'll look at later, rather than using the mouse to execute this file. We could also choose to have this particular application minimised whenever we come into it, rather than full screen.
That's
all of these things.
That's a little icon on the desktop.
As an icon on the desktop, yes.
And
now,
what about this working directory?
Well, let's say OK at this point, and then we'll come back to the working directory. So there's your group, OK? And there's your tool. Let's look at the properties of that tool. A couple of ways that we could do that. Go to the File menu and select Properties. Notice there's also a shortcut key here. OK? Alt and Enter. So let's deselect and hold down the Alt key and do just that.
So you hold the Alt key down, press the Enter key as well.
Press the Enter, or double-click with the mouse on
you can do
the
that
Alt
as well.
key. Yes, yeah. Now, let's take a look in my Properties dialog box. You can see that automatically the working directory has been added. Now, the working directory is the location that you will be presented with when you open that particular tool or when you save any files having used that particular tool. So you may want to set up a directory here which is called Steve. And you could type in the path pointing to that directory within that particular dialog box there.
And it would look in there by default?
Yes, by default, that's right. Now, we might want to change the icon here, Steve. It's not terribly interesting right now, is it? Within Windows, there are a number of icons shipped with the application, and here we can go and select Change Icon.
Now, what's this message?
Well, this is fine. Don't worry too much about this. Because this is a MS-DOS application, the number of icons available for it by default are fairly limited.
Right.
So what we want to do is to browse in Windows and choose from one of the icons shipped with Windows. So we say OK. And automatically now we're taken into something called Progman.exe. Let's just drag that over a second.
Which is in your, looks like it's in your Windows
Which is in the Windows directory, yes. And basically that contains a whole selection of icons. So if I just use the scroll bar here, you can see...
Gosh, some quite colourful ones,
Very colourful ones, yeah. I mean, we go right to the end there. Let's go back a little bit slowly. And we could select from any one of these icons, perhaps this one here. Now, just to mention, there is another file that you could go to within Windows, which also makes icons available to you. Let's just perhaps go and browse for that. That's also within the Windows directory, and it's called moreicons.dll.
That one there?
This one here.
And will everybody have access to these?
Yes, yes. They will be installed with Windows. Again, if you're in a corporate environment, then they may not be available. It depends how Windows has been customised.
Sure. Okay.
But as a default, yes, they will be there.
OK, so that's another place you could go.
That's another place you could go. We'll stick with this one here, shall we? Say OK. And let's just select OK.
Ah, and there it is.
All right, so there it is.
Good. Can we actually run this and see what it does?
We can, yes. We could run that application just by double-clicking.
And this is taking us down to DOS.
Remember, it's an MS-DOS application. We just need to escape from that title screen. And I can execute my menus, Steve, in exactly the same way as I would if I were working within a Windows application.
Has Windows gone anywhere? Is it still there? Or?
Windows is still there. We're just running an MS-DOS application inside of Windows.
Right.
Now, the other thing that we can do here is we could also put this MS-DOS application into its own window. So notice there's your working directory, by the way.
C:\DOS.
That's right.
That could be my directory if I wanted it to be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Let's just cancel from that particular dialog box. And to put this MS-DOS application into its own window, we choose the Alt key on the keyboard and Enter.
Alt-Enter.
Alt-Enter. And you can now see this has its own blue title bar.
Right, but it's sort of in its own smaller window,
It's in its own window, so we can pick it up and move it around.
Can you adjust the size of the window?
Yes, we can, if we go to the right here.
Great.
OK, so it just allows us to run our MS-DOS applications in a window. Later on, we will look at how we can transfer information between MS-DOS applications and Windows applications. So we'll just choose to exit from here now.
And you're using the DOS commands here?
Yes.
Alex. But you can still use your mouse, can't you? Which
you
is
could,
good.
yes. That's, in fact, we are. I am.
Could and do.
Indeed.
Yes.
So there's the beginnings of your group. I think we want to put a few more items in there
nice,
yet.
wouldn't it?
So let's perhaps open up my main group, and we'll start to move some icons between these two groups.
Right.
Let's perhaps take the file manager, shall we?
Sure. How do you do that?
If I select that with the mouse, left button here, pick it up and drag it from the main group into your group.
So you can move things around?
Yes. Now, if I release the mouse button, there it is within your group.
But we've lost File Manager from the main group, haven't we?
So I think it would have been much more sensible to have copied that icon. So we can copy by holding down the Control key and clicking with the left mouse button. So let's copy from your group back into main.
So Control and drag it in again?
Yeah.
Oh, OK. Now we've got two icons.
We've got two icons. Doesn't mean that we have two sets of software on the hard disk for File Manager.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably seen that. Thinking, oh, you've just doubled the amount of space.
Perhaps we should just explain at this point. An icon on the desktop is just a pointer to the software that you have installed on your hard disk.
Right.
And you can have as many pointers as you want. It doesn't really matter. It's entirely up to you.
They all point to the one file.
They point to the one file. And if we had information on a server, not locally on our hard disk, then by the same token, these icons could also point to the software on a server.
So in a network environment, we can also do this.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
We're going to put anything else on there?
I think we should. Just a couple more things. Control panel, that's always very useful, isn't it? So let's take a copy of that, hold down the Control key. So
really you could have as many groups as you wanted and as many icons pointing to these files.
Yeah, yeah. And what a lot of people will do is create their own groups and just take all of the icons that ship with Windows that they use on a regular basis. You know, which saves having lots of windows open.
Okay.
Now, let's just take one more group here. Sorry, one more icon.
Yep.
Clipbook. And you think, yep, that's a good idea, I'm going to use that. But then at a later stage, you think, well, I've never used that icon, I'm just going to delete it. If we just choose the delete key on the keyboard, having selected Clipbook Viewer, it says to me, are you sure you want to delete the item Clipbook Viewer?
Okay, so it's a level of security here.
Yes. Now let's say yes.
Oh.
And it's gone.
Now, have you got rid of the program?
No, no. And it's very important to I think, explain that to people. All we're doing here is deleting the pointer to the software.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's this pointer business again.
It's the pointer business. And once again, you've grasped that, then really it makes working within the Program Manager
so really, the file is hidden away from you, and you've just got on the surface just a little graphical element pointing to it.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, it's a slightly different way of working, isn't it?
It is, yes, and it's one that you have to get used to because a lot of people see that message and they think, oh, crumbs, they're at IT help desk and they have a fit.
Yeah. Indeed. You mentioned the shortcut keystrokes. Can we have a look at how that works?
Yeah. What I'd like to do is close down the main group and just open up accessories because there's one particular... There's accessories. There we are. Let's just drag that down so we can see that more easily. Okay. And there's one particular application in accessories that we looked at earlier, the calculator. So if I drag a copy of the calculator from accessories into your group, we now have that icon there.
Sure.
What I want to do is to go into the properties of the calculator. So remember, hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and double-click with the mouse. Takes us into properties.
Yep.
And here we have shortcut key. None assigned at the moment.
Right.
Let's, click in there, that's fine. And if we now hold down the Control key on the keyboard.
Oh, I see. Control, and that goes in automatically. You're not pressing Control and Alt.
No.
Or you're pressing Control.
I'm just holding down the Control key at this point.
Yep.
Now we can choose the letter that we want to have assigned to this particular icon, the calculator. Might be sensible to have the letter C for calculator.
Yes, makes sense.
So let's type in C there. So Control, Alt and C will open up the calculator for us.
Right.
Okay. So having set that up, we can say OK. And let's just test that, shall we?
Yep.
If I hold down the Control, Alt and C.
And there it is.
There's the calculator.
So that's much quicker than going and finding the icon, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So that could be your word processor, your favourite spreadsheet?
Anything. Anything, Steve.
Fine.
Whatever you have set up there. Now, there's another very useful tool within the Program Manager called the Startup group, which, if you remember, we saw earlier on. There it is, a Startup group. Now, by placing application icons into your Startup group, they will automatically open whenever you come into Windows.
Oh, that's neat.
So if we just open up the Startup group, drag that down there, and the clock is a very good example that people will put into the Startup group, but let's perhaps use the calculator again. Take a copy of that.
Oh, and it's disappeared.
Whoops. And what I need to do at this point is just say tile.
Oh, right.
Okay.
No. Should have said earlier where you can put all the windows side by side.
Yeah. And let's take a copy of the calculator from accessories and drop it into my Startup group. That's gone up to the top there.
So there was a Control key, drag the calculator into Startup.
Into Startup. And what we would have to do to illustrate this would be to exit from Windows, come into Windows, and then you would see the calculator would actually open for us.
That would start automatically?
It would start automatically, yes. And as you said earlier, I think that could be a word processor or a spreadsheet. Or if you're in an electronic mail environment, a lot of people have the email icon in there, just to prompt them to log into email, and that can be loading whilst they're going away and doing other things, getting a cup of coffee or whatever.
And when that does load, it would load sort of full screen mode?
Depends how you've set it up in the options. If you remember, we had the choice to have that application open minimised or run minimised.
Run minimised, yes.
So if it was run minimised, it would be at the bottom of the screen.
Yep.
If not, then yes, you would see it in its own window.
So that's in the properties box again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously we can set our own applications up, but if you install a commercial product in Windows, does it do that, or do you have to do it also for the commercial product?
The commercial product will install itself, basically.
And all the icons?
Yes,
Yep.
all the icons. All Windows applications have an icon associated with them.
Okay.
But as you can see there, you have the choice to go in and change the icon if you want to.
Right.
And even create your own, I have
Yes.
to say.
Well, I know what I'll be doing after the video.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on now and have a look at the next topic.
Great.
Right, now it's time to have some fun with colours and various desktop images and so forth.
Yeah, we're going to customise or look at customising colours and changing the wallpaper that we have as the backdrop to our Windows environment. And all of that is done within the control panel. Very powerful part of the application there.
Which I've already touched on
Yes,
previously.
yeah. And we're just going to look at a couple of elements within the control panel. Let's first of all, Steve, take a look at fonts, shall we? We sort of glossed over this very quickly earlier. Just to explain, first of all, Windows is shipped with a number of fonts. Don't remember the number offhand, but it's quite a long list of fonts. And basically, all of those fonts could be used by any Windows applications that you have installed on your PC.
Right.
Now, in addition to the fonts that you have shipped with Windows, it could be that an application that you purchase also has a number of fonts shipped with that application. So then you've got more fonts to select from.
Okay.
And then the third area where you could get fonts from would be with a printer. Often printers are shipped with additional fonts, and again, they can be used within your applications. And then finally, you might want to go out and purchase an additional font package.
There seems to be lots of those around these days.
There are hundreds of them, and I guess if you're involved in desktop publishing, then you would probably want to have quite a wide selection, whereas if you're doing basic word processing and stuff like that, then you don't need such a fancy font, really.
Okay.
So let's go and have a quick look there within the fonts dialog. You can see here a list of all of the fonts that we currently have installed. Most of these fonts that we're looking at the moment are what are called TrueType fonts. Now, a TrueType font is a scalable font, so it means that we can enlarge that font and get a good definition of that font. Okay, so if we select one of those fonts, you can see that we get a sample of the font appear in this dialog box here. So we may want to select a different sort of font here, and we could use the arrow keys here, in fact.
Oh, the up and down arrows?
Just the up and down arrows to take a look at the fonts that we have installed. Now, if you have purchased one of these third-party applications that provide you with fonts, then we select Add and then insert a diskette, and then the fonts will be installed from that diskette. Okay. So that's fonts, really.
And you've got a
As
remove
you can
option?
see, you can remove. Yes, I was going to say, actually, if you're running low on disk space, you may only use 4 or 5 of these fonts, so you could choose to remove the ones that you don't actually use.
Which is probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea, I think, yeah. Good housekeeping there.
So that's your fonts?
That's your fonts. Next, let's take a look at the colour schemes that we have. Now, just to point out that the colour scheme we have currently is known as the Windows default colour scheme. And again, Windows is shipped with a number of colour schemes. So let's go in and have a look at those. You can see here that we have a dialog box, and we're currently looking at the Windows default scheme.
Right.
If I select the down arrow, then we have a number of other colour schemes. And again, use the arrow key here.
Oh, right. Gosh,
And
some
we get
interesting combinations, aren't there?
Oh, yes. I mean,
that was a bit strong.
if you had a few drinks the night before, you might not want to have some of these schemes
I don't think you'd be
turned
too
on.
productive, would you, with that one?
No. But the good thing here, Steve, is that you can go in. Let's go back to the Windows default colour scheme, shall we? The good thing here is that you can customise the colour schemes down to quite a finite level. So if we move into colour palette, okay,
Gosh.
basically we can customise the elements of Windows. So instead of having a grey desktop, we may want to have perhaps a yellowy colour desktop.
And we see that change there.
And you can see that in the sample there.
Okay.
If we select the down arrow there, we might want to have window text, instead of it being black, perhaps blue.
Right.
And you can see there that window text has changed.
So you can colour every element?
Every element of Windows, yes. We could then go further into this particular dialogue here.
Yep.
And we could select and mix and match our own colours.
Could you?
Very much like if you're painting your home and you want to mix up different shades.
Not good if you're colourblind, though.
No, not at all, no. Or particularly creative.
Right.
So to actually take us back to the Windows default, we'll just select Cancel, because I don't want to save any of those changes that we've made.
I think the default ones look quite good.
Yeah, so we'll say Cancel, and we're back to the Windows default colour scheme.
Right.
The next element of customising your Windows environment is to look at the desktop. And if you remember, at the beginning, we had the Windows logo as the backdrop to our PC.
Yes.
If we go down to the wallpaper section, this is where we actually select the particular backdrop that we want to have. So let's perhaps choose something slightly different, shall we? Oh dear.
There's a lot to choose from.
There are a lot to choose from. Let's go for red brick. And we'll say OK. Now we can't see it because Program Manager is covering it, so we'll minimise Program Manager.
Oh, right.
And there's the red brick.
Gosh, now if you ever wanted to bang your head against the wall during working with a computer, this is a good opportunity.
That's the place to do it, Steve.
Yes.
So let's go back into desktop and perhaps set it back to the default Windows logo. Now, what you will find is that a lot of organisations will have their own logo as the backdrop to their PCs.
Right.
Okay, so that's obviously quite a nice thing to have.
You showed us the that Win logo in Paintbrush earlier on, the graphics program.
Yeah.
So you could create something in there and use it?
We could create something in there, yes, and use that as a backdrop.
Great.
Yeah. The other element within this particular dialog box is towards the top, and it's pattern. Okay, we currently have no pattern selected. Let's select perhaps boxes, and we can go in and edit the pattern. And basically, what happens with the pattern is if you don't have a logo of some description as your wallpaper, then pattern will pick up from the colour that you have set up within the colour scheme of Windows. And you can go in and choose to edit the pattern or whatever here. So that's useful if you don't have a Win logo backdrop or something similar.
And there we are, we're back to our desktop.
Yeah.
So if you're going to choose patterns, you couldn't have a wallpaper, or you wouldn't want to have a wallpaper showing?
You wouldn't really want to have both, no. It's one or the other, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So if you've deleted all of your wallpapers off your system, for example, to save on disk space, then you would probably use the pattern facility more.
I think the wallpaper looks nicer.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get you to show us later on how we can create our own images to place on the desktop.
Yeah,
because I want to get my holiday snaps on that.
Steve.
Let's move on now and have a look at the next topic.
Okay.
Well, Jackie has already shown us some quite snazzy ways of enhancing the Windows environment.
Yeah.
And you're going to take it a step further, aren't you?
We are. We're going to look at customising the desktop or the wallpaper.
Yep.
Okay, so we've been looking at the Microsoft Win logo wallpaper for most of the video so far.
Yes.
We may want to incorporate our own bitmap. And we can look at that.
The desktop is this area behind the Program Manager.
Yeah, it's the grey area behind the Program Manager.
So if you choose to maximise your Program Manager,
then you don't see the desktop. No.
Okay.
No.
Good. So here we are. You've started the control panel.
Yeah. Now, before we go any further, Steve, notice we've had the clock running up until now. Let's perhaps now close down the clock. If we choose Control Escape. Remember, that brings up the task list for us.
Yep.
And we can see that we have 3 applications running. We have the clock. We also have Control Panel running, because that is an application in its own right. And the Program Manager is running.
So, yes, so we see the Control Panel outside of the Program Manager, which is where you see applications, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's why it's not a program group.
You're right, absolutely. And I want to just close down the clock, so we have clock selected. We'll say End Task.
We quickly saw it disappearing there.
We quickly saw it disappear.
So that's yet another way of closing down an application.
Yet another way. And now we're going to look at creating our own wallpaper. So let's go into Desktop.
I'm looking forward to seeing this.
I thought you were. Up until now, we've been looking at the Win logo desktop. What we want to do here is show how we could perhaps create our own desktop and have that as the backdrop. And again, what you might have is a corporate environment where you have your company logo as the backdrop to your desktop. So let's go through and see what we have here. We've got a number of different logos in here. In fact, there's your own Softvision logo, so we could have that as the backdrop to our desktop. But in fact, what I want to do, Steve, is to go into a logo that we've semi-created already.
Yes, I saw you beavering away in the break there.
Yeah, yeah, and show how we can make some finite changes to that and have that as the backdrop to our PC.
Yep.
So let's cancel from here and close down Control Panel. And I want to load up Paintbrush, which is in Accessories.
Yep.
Okay, and just maximise Paintbrush and open. Here it is. Here's a bitmap file called jackie.bmp.
Now, for the desktop to pick these up as wallpaper, do they have to be in the Windows directory?
They have to be in the Windows directory, yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's open up that particular bitmap, one that we started to create earlier. And just illustrate how we could make some finite changes to that.
You have been busy.
Yes. Let's perhaps fill in the yellow circles or the yellow spaces. Sorry, the white spaces. I'm sorry, Steve.
You've been staring at this monitor too long.
With a different colour, perhaps the light grey. Okay, so we'll just fill those in. Just clicking there with the mouse.
Well, you've got a fine eye, haven't you?
Ah, well.
That looks good.
And if we save those changes, just overwrite that file name.
Yep.
Exit from Paintbrush. Go back into Control Panel.
Right.
Okay.
And we need to call up our desktop again?
We need to call up our desktop. And if you remember, it was called jackie.bmp.
There it is.
There it is. We could have that centred. I think that would be better for that particular bitmap.
Right.
So we'll say OK.
Oh.
Minimise Program Manager.
And there we are on the desktop.
There we are, yes.
No, that's great.
Now, we just chose to use text, but obviously we could be a little bit more elaborate with graphics and things like that.
So you can really customise the environment to suit your company, or if you're working from home.
To suit your own personal
Have a picture of
needs.
your last trip to the coast.
Your holiday snaps or whatever.
Okay.
In a similar vein to customising our desktop, let's take a look at another area within the desktop dialog box here, and this is the screensaver. Okay.
What is a screensaver exactly?
I knew you were going to say that.
Just a quick definition.
A screensaver is something that will come into play after a predefined amount of time.
Yes.
For example, if I was sitting at my PC and I had Word and Excel opened and I was working away within those documents, then I went away for lunch or to get a cup of coffee or something, I could set up a screensaver so that when my keyboard or my mouse haven't been used for 1 minute or 2 minutes or however long, the screensaver will come into effect and replace whatever is being seen on my screen.
Okay.
So the screensaver can be a static picture or it could be a message, which is what we're going to look at now. Okay. So you might want to have a message set up to say to people back at 2 o'clock or something like that. So let's click on the down-facing arrow. Yes. Now, to get the message that we want to show, you need to select Marquee. Okay. And now we want to choose to set that up.
So you click on the Setup
button. So click on Setup. And now you can see we have a default sort of colour scheme set up here. We might not want to have black as the background. We might want to have blue. That's better. We then would